In exploring role-playing games, what makes for a good GM, a good game master? Let's explore this narrative in this podcast and build a checklist together, leveraging those topics, leveraging those points to keep in mind as we make our way through an adventure, as we run a tabletop game, and as we interface and play with our players. Because remember, the GM is a player also, just from a different perspective, but that's a vital element to remember. The primary thing that I would say as a GM is to keep in mind that the rules are an illusion. The rules in your role-playing system, they are optional. And what I mean by that is, of course, naturally, the rules are there to invoke a narrative. They're there to create a framework of what is possible and not possible, give it order, form, and function, give us language, the rules to communicate back and forth, to tell a story, what we want our characters to do. They're important, but never prevent the rules from going against the story. Never prevent the rules from preventing your players from doing something. If it's not possible to do, and they still want to attempt to do it, you can understand the parameters of the rules. Just because I can't fly and levitate in this gaming universe, if I want to jump off that cliff, I'll never tell my players you can't do it. If you want to give it a go, let's give it a go. There are points where if advancing the story or continuing the narrative, if my players want to do something that's really amazing, we call this adventure hooks, where we write an adventure or are running an adventure, and as that progresses along, we're looking to collaborate with the players, with our fellow gamers, to build on the ideas that they present, to leverage on that. So as we're telling the story, if the players want to do something that's really creative, really unique, and it's going to take the game in an amazingly different, fun, and wonderful direction, but on page 78 of the rules, you really can't do that, I'm willing to bend the rules a little bit. Put the game first and don't let the rules prevent you from running your game. The second aspect would be talk less. Shift the bulk of the game to what the players want to do. And we see this duality with new GMs in that the first time as a game master, when the players enter an area, you walk into a room, it's natural, and the GM has to describe from the player's point of view, from their knowledge, from their abilities, what would you see? And you describe the room in details, and you give options of objects and characters and environmental effects, but don't go so overboard and jump the positioning. If there's an example of a non-player character, a wizard over in the corner studying the spell book, when you walk into the inn for the first time, I'll describe that wizard. I'll describe the spell book. I'll describe the robes that they're wearing. I'll describe what they're involved in, what they're looking like. But I won't say, well, this is what they look like, and you see this is the book that they're reading, and it's a spell book, and you see that they want to come over and talk to you and start moving into dialogue. Like, no, less is more. Mention the book because you can see it. Now the players, in this example, have a choice of the narrative. You want to know what's so important about that book because the DM mentioned it, but they didn't say what that book was. Do you just walk right over as a player? This is where you generate plot hooks, adventure hooks. Do they just boldly walk over and say, what are you reading? Do they kind of move and hide in the shadows? Do they take a look from another point of the room? This is the back and forth. So as a GM, less is more. The less you describe, wait for the players to collaborate. Wait for the players to prompt. The third piece, and we're not going to overload in this vlog. There's about 5 or 6 or 7 important pieces. We're just going to look at the top 3, in my opinion, that the sooner we can master these skills, the quicker we're going to be able to really turn around and have an amazing adventure, an amazing game. This idea that every single player, this is true, physical tabletop, virtual tabletop, playing online, whatever that medium is going to be, every player needs to have a vision and a voice and be heard at the table. We all enjoy role-playing games from different perspectives. Some of us might get in character and be really loud and animated. I try to do my best to remain calm as a player. Other players are back and forth, more kind of Euro, scientific. A few are just quiet and happy to listen to the story. and happy to see in the moment what may or may not happen. The challenge becomes in navigating effectively and tying together effectively all of these different player personalities. So you want to keep track of who's saying what, who's acting, who's getting that chance to go. And if you see someone is primarily dominating the table, dominating the decision-making, the conversations, it might not be on purpose. Often it's not on purpose. But to keep the other players immersed in the game, ask one of those players a direct question. So back to this wizard in the corner, the parties decided they want to maybe sneak over, send the rogue over to take a look. The fighter will drop their sword in front of the wizard to see what happens as a distraction. Before we make any skill checks, roll any dice, or resolve it, if someone hasn't been brought in with their voice, then as a DM, say to that person, okay, we're ready to go. What does your character want to do? As the DM, you can approach it like, I need clarification. I need feedback. In this scenario, where's your character going to be? Ask that question directly. Sometimes by asking a quick, direct question, what do you want your character to do? That will pull the person in, that will keep them engaged, and that'll keep the flow, literally the round table flow of the game, moving and going.